We're going to be starting with hot cross buns. Next up is Mary Had a Little Lamb. Finally, Twinkle Twinkle Had a Little Star. Thank you.
History of the clarinet and the saxophone by us. In about 2700 BC, the Egyptians created an instrument called the Zumara. It only had two body pieces and it played at the same time. One didn't sound exactly the same, so it resulted in an out-of-tune sound. The Zumara's two pipes were parallel, so that each finger the player covered two holes, one on each pipe. The clarinet evolved from an earlier instrument called the chamallow. This was the first reeded instrument. It did not have a lower register, and the clarinet's lower register is still referred to as the chamallow. Johann Christopher Denner and his son Jacob Denner improved the chamallow that resulted in the creation of the new instrument called the clarinet. Denner added two keys and increased the instrument's range by over 2 octaves. He also created a better mouthpiece and improved the bell. Denner's clarinet only had 2 keys that were mostly made from brass along with spring. The clarinet itself was made from boxwood, plum, ebony, ivory, or pear. Around 1700, Denner added the register key. In 1740, a 3rd key was added, making it able to play the low E. In 1749, a man named Rameau used the clarinet in his opera in Paris. In 750, Barthold Fritz added the 4th and 5th key to the clarinet. And in 751, the clarinet is introduced to London by Bach. The clarinet means little trumpet. The smallest clarinet is pitched in the A-B, which it is most commonly known as the piccolo clarinet. It's minor 7th above the standard B-flat instrument. This type of clarinet is not very common, although it is available for special order and from a company in France. The clarinet was the last instrument to be included in the symphony orchestra. And these are works cited.
The beginning of the saxophone. Adolphe Sax was born on November 6, 1814 in Belgium. His father was a maker of musical instruments, and because of this, Adolphe developed a passion of music. During his youth, he studied the clarinet and flute. He was influenced to improve the tones of the bass clarinet, and what he ended up coming up with was a single reed instrument made out of metal that has a conical bore and overblows at the octave. The saxophone. In 1841, Adolphe Sax, for the first time ever, showed his creation, the C-bass saxophone, to the composer Hector Berlioz. He was impressed and wrote an article on the new instrument called the saxophone. Adolphe took it to the streets of Paris to spread the word about the instrument. In December, the saxophone had an orchestral debut at the Paris Conservatory throughout the opera The Last King of Judah by George Kastner. Adolphe Sax obtained a patent for his saxophone and had 14 variations. These included the E-flat soprano, F soprano, B-flat soprano, C soprano, E-flat alto, F alto, B-flat tenor, E-flat baritone, B-flat bass, C bass, E-flat contrabass, and F contrabass. Since it was the first created, the sax had undergone many other changes. These are the different kinds. Yes. The saxophone has a prominent role in the development of jazz. The saxophone had a metal body and it played with a single beating reed which the player controls through the tightness of his mouth. Only 4 members of the saxophone family are commonly used today: the soprano, the alto, the tenor, and bass saxophone. Although the saxophone is commonly used in jazz, it has also been successful with symphonic music such as the Bizet. The saxophone became very popular in all types of music from jazz to rock. Okay. And this is what you learned.
Okay, this semester I learned a lot from Lydia, and prior to this I never really played the clarinet, and I assumed it was going to be very hard for me to transition from saxophone to clarinet, even though they're both reeded instruments. I found that the saxophone was very closely related to the clarinet, but the fingerings on the saxophone was much easier than the clarinet for me, and because of the lower and higher octaves, the saxophone has the same fingering, but a clarinet player must learn like different fingerings for the lower and higher octaves, and I really struggled learning the higher octave fingering on the clarinet, but I found the lower octaves were much easier.
From Taya, I learned that the embouchure from the saxophone is quite different from the clarinet. While trying to learn the pieces, I was squeaking quite a bit, and then I realized I was using the clarinet strategy instead of the correct strategy. It was difficult to learn a new embouchure in order to play the songs correctly, however, I ultimately figured it out and was no longer squeaking my way through the songs.